It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Reverend Dr. Kenneth Daniel, President and CEO of United Church Homes. Ken joined UCH in 2011, and for over the past 30 years, he has worked in a variety of positions in senior healthcare and housing services and as a licensed nursing home administrator. Prior to joining UCH, Ken served as executive director of Ingleside at Rock Creek and also has spent the better part of 20 years in senior living, affordable housing, and skilled nursing leadership positions within Phoebe Ministries in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Reverend Daniel holds a master's degree in public administration from Marywood University and earned master's degrees from United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities and from Moravian Theological Seminary. He currently serves on several community, church, and professional boards and is the immediate past chairman of the board of Leading Age Ohio. Reverend Ken Daniel, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Great to have you here today. And I take it you're somewhere in Ohio. I'm on the coast in Connecticut. How's the weather treating you? You still getting that real hot weather we've had for the last few weeks?
No, we've cleared out here. We have relatively low humidity and bright
Nice.
sunshine and
Nice.
comfortable temperatures. So we'll
The
take
perfect
these
part of
days as
summer.
we get them. Exactly.
The perfect part of summer. Great. Well, we always like to start these podcasts, Ken, with understanding a little bit about the early life of our guests. So tell us a little bit about that, where you grew up, what mom and dad did, what part of the country, brothers and sisters and such.
I grew up in Pennsylvania
Hmm.
in a small community outside of Allentown.
Oh,
And
yeah.
uh,
Lehigh Valley.
it was a
Mhm.
Moravian community called Emmaus, like the biblical
Uh-huh.
name.
Right.
And spent my formative years there till I was in college. And during that time, my dad was a watchmaker jeweler for the Hess's
Oh,
department store in Allentown.
all right. Yeah.
And my mother was a nurse, although she stopped working actively professionally when I was born
Right.
to stay home and make sure I didn't get in any trouble.
Do you have siblings?
I do not have siblings. I'm an only
Okay.
child.
Only child.
I
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
along kind of late in life for both of them. My
Yeah.
mom was just about 40. My dad was
Oh,
57. So I've had an experience of kind of unusual for many.
yeah. Yeah. Awesome. My parents were older as well, although I wasn't an only child. I was 7 and 10 years younger. So from the age of about 10, I was on my own. And mom worked from the home up until the time or I started working from home when the time you were born. Did she go back into a profession as you got older?
She did not, but she
Okay.
was very active volunteering in the community. She served
Yeah.
on a local public health nursing service board of directors. So she always kept her fingers into it. And she was the neighborhood first aid station for a lot of my friends growing up. They always knew to come over to the Daniel house for
If there's a cut
band-aids
or a
and other
bruise.
things. That's
I
right.
love that. I love that. What were some of the early memories that you got of mom and dad? Anything inspirational, anything you observed or heard or, lessons learned, those things that kind of run in our heads as we go through life.
Well, of course, both are very important to me in how I've grown up. My parents were both very active in church.
Yeah.
We were very involved, even though our church was in Allentown, and we lived outside of the city. We would make the half-hour trek every week, and both of them, my dad was involved on the church council. My mom was involved
Yeah.
in teaching adult Sunday school. I got involved in youth fellowship and uh, other things throughout our time. It was a very important part of my upbringing. My dad worked as a watchmaker, so he had a bench
Yeah.
at home with all the little parts
Oh,
and
cool.
pieces that go into clocks and watches, and I was fascinated by all of that. So I don't know if I have a more of a sense of detail and how do things work, how do take things apart and put them back together again
Yeah.
better. I got sort of trace some of that interest to him, and of course my mom being in healthcare, and I learned a lot about uh, the importance of healthcare, nursing,
Sure.
and my wife's mother is a nurse, so I can't get away from nurses, and ended up going into long-term care, working with a bunch of wonderful nurses who have
That's amazing.
also
Well,
been part of my
there's
journey.
yeah, I was going to say
Life,
clearly there's an influence there on both sides, right? And we'll get
right?
into your profession in a minute, but I can see where the early parts of that began to develop. Were you a good student in school
Yes, yes, I was.
for the
I,
subjects that you enjoyed, or all everything?
well, of course, my parents placed a great emphasis on education and doing well in school, and
Sure.
I did. I graduated with honors from high school and college.
Nice. Yeah.
So uh, again, my parents both working and both kind of coming out of my dad, especially more kind of Pennsylvania Dutch culture, and I would
Yeah.
express interest in his watchmaking, and he'd say, this is all good, but you're going to go to college, and
Huh.
there's more for your life than fixing watches. So he was very clear about that, and so
Was he a
education
college
was.
grad, or he
No,
was
he
he was not?
he left in the eighth after the eighth grade,
Right.
being quite a bit older. He grew up and was a combat veteran of World War One.
Wow.
So not having high school in his life, I think, was an important thing for him to recognize. Was
Yeah.
had become
Yeah.
ever more important by the time I came along in the 1950s. But
Sure.
after the war, he was trained in his trade by the Army after he got out of Walter Reed Hospital, recuperating from combat injuries, and so he had a wonderful perspective on
Yeah.
perver- uh, pers- perseverance and overcoming adversity,
Right.
and that passed along to me.
And the importance of education. Yeah. What
Yes.
about other activities in schools, in sports, music, theater, debate?
Yes, I was involved in music. I played the clarinet in high
Yeah.
school, and was in the band, the orchestra at our high school. Did pit orchestra for shows, um, things like that. Played varsity soccer throughout my
Right.
4 years in high school. It was a new sport
Yeah.
for our school back then, and
Sure.
uh, was loved it, and wasn't always that good at it, but I played, and was probably one of the first couple of guys came off the bench, but I did get a letter, and that was fun. I was able to what I coach my sons as they took up soccer in their school age years, so that
Right.
was a
Cool.
fun thing to
Cool.
come back to.
Good fun. Now, you went on to college, and you actually have quite an extensive educational background, so we should talk a little bit about that. But was it Kutztown University of Pennsylvania?
Yep,
Is that was your first, right?
Kutztown.
Kutztown?
You have to practice your Pennsylvania
I
tongue.
know, I know. Yeah,
Yeah,
that human
Kutztown State
language.
College was pretty near home, but far enough. I went off thinking that uh, I wasn't sure of my career direction at the time. I'd always loved English, so I majored in English. Thought I might go into teaching, but I stayed in liberal arts because I loved
Yeah,
English and taking Shakespeare and all that good stuff. And
yeah.
you know, faced the dilemma after toward graduation, like, well, what are you going to do with an English degree? And but I had, church was a very important part of my
Yeah,
growing up, and I felt a call to ministry, and so it became clear to me that that's really the next step, and I went off to United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities in Minnesota,
Now
and
that was right
pursued.
after graduation. Then you did
Yes, right
that
after
directly after
college.
BA. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
cool. And then went on and got your master's, correct, in
So
divinity.
I graduated from United Seminary in 2001 and began serving. I was called to serve a congregation, St. Andrew's United Church of Christ in Reading, Pennsylvania. So I came back to close to home, served this wonderful little congregation in inner city Reading, which was struggling. I I arrived on the doorstep, 26 years old, and
Wow.
I was
So that was
following
your
a
first. That
past.
was your first job. Pretty much your
Yeah, I
first
was
job.
following
Yeah,
a
yeah.
pastor who had served there 26 years. So
Oh my
most
gosh,
people
big
didn't know
shoes to
what
fill.
they
Yeah.
saw in the pulpit. They knew it was not the previous pastor, and I looked like I was just out of high school, you know.
Right.
But they
Right.
were very kind, and it was in that congregation I learned a lot about ministry with older adults. I got
Yeah.
involved with a nonprofit that eventually led to a career change for me because of my involvement in that congregation.
Right. Right. Well, tell us a little bit about
And I
that.
did
How
get
was it?
along the way, I was working on this master's degree in pastoral counseling at Moravian Seminary in Bethlehem, thinking that, you know, at some point I might do more of that sort of thing. I liked counseling. I liked psychology.
Yeah.
Um, and and while I was pursuing that, I was on the board of Phoebe Burke's Village, which was an extension of Phoebe Ministries in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and gotten to know the CEO, Grant Harity, over a number of years. And he approached me. I had been in my parish about 7, 8 years, and he said,
Yeah.
"We have a place that we'd like you to join our staff." And I
Wow.
said, "Well, I didn't take any business classes. I can quote you Shakespeare and the Bible."
Right.
And he
Right.
said, we can teach you the business. We can teach you what you need to know. I need your people skills.
You knew you had the
And it was
heart.
very
Yeah.
compelling
Yeah.
to me. And Dr.
Wow.
Harity brought me over to Allentown, and I became the manager of Phoebe Terrace, which was an
Phoebe
88
Terrace.
unit
Yeah.
apartment building on the
Wow.
main campus of Phoebe Ministries. And my life, my career, my calling changed in 1989. I
Well,
fell in
let's
love
let's
with
back
this
up.
work.
Let's back up
Yeah.
a bit. I want to hear more because you used to be at 7.5 years as a pastor, and as you said, you came in as a 26, 27 year old. You filled
Yep.
the shoes of someone that was, twice your age. Tell us a little bit about that challenge. I mean, how long did it take to, kind of get the respect and the trust of your flock?
Well, they were very patient with me. Of course, you know, when I came out of seminary, I had all the answers and uh, all of the weapons in the arsenal to be, imposing on them uh, from a leadership standpoint. But there was I really feel like I had two separate ministries at St. Andrews.
Hmm.
You know, the first 3 years or so, it became very challenging. There was, high expectations. They wanted a youth program. There were no youth to speak of. I was cutting my teeth, so to speak, and trying to get confident as a leader. Following a long tenured pastor, there's a lot of change
Yeah.
that people want. There's a lot of change that people don't want but need. And so I was involved in kind of all of that
Yeah.
kind of work. And then there was a point in time where it kind of pivoted, where, I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, but there was a moment in time where it just people finally gave me their permission to lead them. I don't know if I can,
Interesting. Yeah.
and it was
Got it.
like from that moment on, there was a stronger sense of alignment with the leaders, a
Hmm.
stronger sense of engagement with the parishioners. We did start a youth program. We improved the Sunday school. I was able to do more things, innovative things. We started a furniture ministry where
Wow.
we had an empty old back Sunday school hall that we were able to work with the Salvation Army, and they brought used furniture that they would give to needy families in the community. So We were opening the doors, getting involved in many social missions at the time. So the
Yeah.
second part of my ministry there was about change,
Right.
uh, and it became, as I look back, that experience became sort of the template for the rest of my work
Yeah.
in the field of senior ministries, because I became involved in situations of change in every
Mm.
setting, whether it was at the department level or at a building level. Eventually, it was at a campus level, and certainly now in my work at UCH is at a corporate level. So it's like
Right.
I've
Right.
been involved in instituting change in every setting I've been in.
So you were just though in your early 30s when you left versus, your
Yep.
predecessor who had left probably in his 50s or 60s. How did that go? I mean, I'm sure by then the congregation, loved you, they respected you, trusted you. Was that kind of a big rift, or did the folks understand that you needed to, go
They
on,
did
being called
understand.
in that direction? Yeah.
Yes, they did. I mean, it was difficult, and our first child, our oldest son, was born in the fall of 1988, and this conversation with the CEO at Phoebe Ministries was started in the winter time, and
Right. Right.
uh, I had committed to staying a full year after I took a sabbatical leave after my son was born, so I could be at home and finish my master's degree at Moravian. And this opportunity came up, and I was like, I have to do this.
Wow.
And so I
Wow.
worked
You
with the
just called.
folks, the leaders,
Yeah.
and they were like, okay, we understand it didn't work out the way we all had hoped. We want you to stay, but we're not going to hold on to you either,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
go with our blessing. And I'm
Yeah.
still in touch with the folks there. They invite me back for
Awesome.
church anniversaries.
Yeah.
I'm now the longest surviving former pastor of the congregation, so that you
Do they ask you up to do sermons every now and then?
once in a
Do you
while,
ask
yeah, for
ministers?
anniversaries they have
Yeah,
had me
yeah,
come back, and I
that's
still hear
awesome.
from some of the folks through Facebook, especially.
Right. Well, and you had a wonderful career with Phoebe. Just looking at your various positions, 15, 16 years it looks like in total. Some
19,
things,
yeah.
yeah, 19 in total as you went through that. What were some of the early challenges that you faced as you came into, serving others in that capacity?
Well, overall, the challenge is marrying mission with the need to maintain efficient and productive operations.
Right.
And my first experience, I started at Phoebe Terrace in February of 1989. Everything was new to me. I'm learning, and the CEO called me into his office one day, and he said, "We have a financial challenge at Phoebe Terrace. We need to raise the residents' fees by 15% next
Wow.
month."
Wow.
And I, I was like,
Thanks very
okay.
much.
I was like,
Here's your first
okay,
assignment. Yeah.
I know. And I thought, well, this will be a short, happy, unhappy experience. But right, he immediately looked at me, and he had the CFO with him, and he said, we need to do this because the organization is struggling. We withheld increases in the early years of the
Mm,
operation
right.
because we had plenty of cash, but now things are getting used, and we really should have just incrementally raised the rates. He said, but this is my decision as CEO, not yours as the manager. So I
Yeah.
will I will be there with you, and I will announce this and take questions about it. I will take the heat for this. And it
Uh-huh.
was such a formative lesson in leadership for me. And I have
Yeah.
used
Yeah.
that example many, many times in my work where I've needed to make some tough decisions with the local administrators
Right.
and let people know that it was not something that I was deferring to someone else, but taking
Yeah.
ownership of
Yeah.
directly.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Great. And
So, and then I
you're
got promoted to Phoebe Home, which is a very large 395 bed nursing facility with
yeah.
55 units of assisted living as part of it. I was the assistant administrator, was able to earn my nursing home administrator's license. I was the chief operating officer, so that really exposed me and helped me, accelerate my learning about operations and management and supervision, and so it just kind of evolved from there. I was there a few years, and they had another opportunity for me. The Phoebe Berks County facility was built by then, or being built,
Mm.
and the new nursing home out there was 120 beds. The previous administrator had left, and the organization was in somewhat of turmoil. They had a bad survey experience, and the state was coming down hard on them. And the CEO at the time, the, the interim CEO at that time, my former CEO had retired. The interim came to me and said, "Look, we need you to go out there and straighten things out."
Right.
So with 2 years of experience under my belt, I go out to this 120 bed facility, brand new, and it took some time. Certainly, I had some very forthright conversations, like with the Berks County Office of Aging director, and she said, "Look, this place is hanging by a thread.
Mm.
You need to fix this quickly because it's terrible." I thought it was a little bit of an exaggeration, but I had good people. I had good people, good team,
Yeah.
and they just
Yeah.
needed some TLC, they needed some
TLC.
direction, they
Yeah.
needed someone to
Right.
make some hard decisions with them and build community. And I learned
Right.
a lot in that role, and we did that. And 2 years after that, we had a deficiency-free survey. Uh, and the director of the Office of Aging came back to me and she said, you know, you've done a great job here. She said, when people ask me what nursing home in town to go to, I say, you go to Phoebe Berks, and after that, it doesn't matter because that's the best.
Mm.
So I
Wow.
took that was a
Amazing.
real moment. I shared that with the team, and
Yeah.
it really they had matured and come together and formed a great working partnership with us, and it was a very profound moment.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, you left there as a VP, right? You were at Allentown campus operations.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have another opportunity for you. I learned to
Sure.
sort
They
of
were pushing you along.
opportunity was in this affordable housing. They had a small department of affordable housing properties. I think we had
Right.
16 properties, and I didn't know anything about affordable housing or HUD. And that department was in turmoil. They had, uh, were incurring losses. They had some development projects that went sideways at the time and needed fixed up.
Yeah.
Um, Problems with developers and contractors and all that good stuff. So they brought me back into Allentown office to straighten out and improve that. So I did that for a couple of years, and then they
Yeah.
had another opportunity, and they sent me back to Phoebe Home, this time as the vice president of operations for the whole Allentown campus, which
Right.
included
Right.
both the terrace and the affordable housing piece that was part of it. So there was 700 and some units that I
Wow.
was over before I eventually left
Yeah. So
Phoebe.
almost 20 years there now. That must have
Yeah.
been a difficult departure. What kind of led you to that decision at that point in your career?
Couple of things. My wife is a pastor,
Hmm.
serving in the United Church of Christ, and we had been living in outside of Allentown, and she was serving a church 17 years when she got a call about an opportunity in Frederick, Maryland, and that congregation was looking for a pastor who could help with lay leadership and youth ministry, and outreach mission. And they came looking for her, and as soon as she took this conversation and had an interview, I thought she's we're going to move to Maryland.
Yeah.
And
Time to
it's been a
follow her, right?
wonderful, yeah, it's
Yeah.
been a wonderful match for her. She's the senior pastor at this congregation in downtown Frederick. And at that point, our older son graduated high school and was off to college. Our younger son was going to be a sophomore in high school, and so we moved him with Barbara to Frederick. I was still working at Phoebe, and I think I did that 2 more years, running back and forth between Frederick and
Mm.
Allentown, and
Yeah.
finally found a role as the executive director of the Ingleside at Rock Creek Retirement Community in Northwest DC, and made the shift to be reunited with my family, and I
Right.
was there
Nice.
able to be there for my son's senior year. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's
Cool.
Ingleside was a whole other story of transformation and change and hard work to improve systems and processes of its own.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, you actually had a little bit of the taste of the corner office. I think you were an interim president and CEO at Lancaster Theological Seminary before coming over to United Church Homes. Tell us a little bit about kind of that decision to join UCH and how that came about, and tell us more about UCH too, and kind of your footprint.
Well, I was part of this transition team at Ingleside, and the CEO at the time kind of ran afoul of some key board members, and unfortunately, they separated him, and then all of the people that he brought in on his transition team, so to speak, we all ended up leaving at one point or another, and it was very hard. It was a tough life lesson for me. I felt like I had failed in some way when I knew, sort of objectively that it was, a lot going on that really had little to do with my performance or lack thereof.
Right.
So I came, during the summer of 2010, I was involved with my denomination and having my annual review and let them know what I'm doing. I'm sort of between things now. I'm looking for opportunities, and maybe in the church, maybe back in senior living. I didn't know at that point. A week or two after that meeting, I get a call from the chair of the Lancaster Seminary, who had been on that judicatory committee, and she said,
panel, yeah.
that panel, and she said, we just lost the president at Lancaster Seminary who took another job in California. Would you be interested in being our interim president? I'm like,
wow.
Oh my God. So
godsend.
well, I said, what do you need? And she said, well, the school needs a lot of help with HR issues, with financial management issues, with personnel and policy development. We've got some programs that are losing money, and we need to look at kind of coming back to the basics and prepare for, a settled president to come in. They were going to start a search. So my wife Barbara had been a former chair of that seminary board. She's an alumna of the seminary.
Oh, right. Cool.
So she was traveling at the time overseas, and I called her and I said, guess what? And her response was, well, she was actually visiting one of our dear friends who was the president of the Near East School of Theology in Beirut, Lebanon, at the time, and our friend Mary is in the background saying, tell him not to do it. Do not do this. You'll be unhappy forever. And Barbara's comment was, well, I know you're going to do this because I know you. Just don't screw it up. So don't screw up my seminary.
This is my alma mater. Yeah,
exactly. But the academic year started in late August 2010, and I had a wonderful board experience. We had to work to build trust with the faculty, with the staff, go through a lot of painful changes. They had lost their vice president of advancement as well as their president. And then the dean left a few months into my tenure there. So it was really rebuilding a lot of the basic leadership team.
And you had no interest in the full-time position, right? You weren't part of the search. It was
well, I wasn't. I mean, I was interested, but typically that's not how things really work.
Yeah.
But I was able to bring the things that I brought, and I really was still interested in the nonprofit faith-based senior living sector, and during that time, in the winter of 2010-11, that January, I guess it was, I get a call from a search firm that's looking for the CEO at United Church Homes, and things fell into place.
And were you familiar with the company before? Had you known of them?
A little bit. I knew the former CEO. He had retired.
Right. Okay.
It's a larger organization than Phoebe was. They had 8 or 10 nursing homes at the time and retirement communities, and 50 or so affordable housing. So one of the larger United Church of Christ social ministries. Um, and it's just one of those things. I came out, I met people.
Yeah.
Uh, it was tough. It was interesting. I knew it was going to be a hard pull. The CEO had been here for 25 years,
Wow.
and they're bringing me. There were internal candidates. I'm coming in from
Over there.
outside,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was a hard road to hoe. But again, finding and building team was part of the initial work I had to do here, and here I am 11 years later,
I love it.
and
Yeah.
it's
Well,
a lot of accomplishments that we've been able to achieve.
tell us a little bit about your operations and your mission.
We sponsor and have built or manage uh, a variety of all faith-based organizations
Hmm.
for senior care, go from freestanding independent nursing and assisted living facilities. We have a couple of life plan communities that have the full continuum of care on the campus. We recently started an initiative to build residential market rate housing for
Mm.
a middle market client. So folks who have too much asset or income to qualify for subsidized housing are sort of in limbo in the middle. And so we've acquired three communities that way, uh, and our newest property is in Columbus, which is a new setting for us,
Mm.
130 units in suburban Columbus. So we're now including the capital city in our footprint. Very
Nice.
exciting. It's apartments, but we have a service component that I'll talk about in a minute. And we've continued to develop affordable housing. We own uh, 62 properties, and we manage uh, for other independent boards, and we provide some special targeted individual billing services for a number of other client organizations. So it's a pretty broad spectrum
Yeah.
of operation. We're in 14 states. We serve about
Wow.
5,000 people every day. We're in 85 different discrete settings,
Mm.
uh, and of course, there's a concentration here in Ohio, but outside of Ohio, from Memphis, Tennessee down to Jackson, Mississippi is our second highest concentration. We have
Wow.
13 affordable housing properties for low income adults in that section of the country. And we also, over the years, have identified some very special priority areas, including not just the African American communities, but we have two properties that serve Native American nations, one in Minnesota, one in Nebraska, and we have properties that serve people that have chronic brain trauma,
Wow.
and one that serves people that are totally physically disabled using an affordable housing HUD platform than to bring in community support services.
Very
So
diverse.
it's a
Yeah.
little of this, a lot of that. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard to encapsulate, but as leading age national and the Ziegler organization measure of the total market rate and affordable housing units that we own or manage, we are like the 21st largest nonprofit provider in the country.
Wow. Wow. Huge. How would you say your leadership style has changed from those, early days as a mid-20s pastor to your 20 years at Phoebe and now, 10 years into the corner office at United Church Homes?
Well, um, I've learned that humor goes a long way
Yeah.
to building rapport with people. If it's
Mm.
used properly, it can be overused, of course, and I have overused it from time to time on my own anxieties. Uh, I've learned that you know I think it was Jim Collins in his book Good to Great uh, uh, often commented it's about who before what. It's,
That's
in
right.
other words, it's about the people on the team and finding the right people and developing the right culture for that team, so that when we go out and identify this or that to do, I've got a team that trusts each other, works well together,
Mm,
aligns very closely with the culture of United Church Homes and its mission, um, and really we've just been able to accelerate change over the last 5, 6, 7 years or so, as a result of that.
awesome. What, how would you describe kind of the UCH company culture? Is there, kind of a commonality that make sure you kind of communicate or propagate to the rank and file? You've got is it about 700 employees in total? How many across the
1,500 now.
1,500? Right. Okay. Gosh. Wow.
Yes, yes.
And it's hard to get to know them all. They're obviously diverse across all the states. How do you describe it, and how do you keep that rich? How do you keep that going?
Well, early on, the board and I developed engaged in a kind of a refresh of our mission statement and our mission, vision, and values. And uh, you know, our vision is to transform the experience of aging through communities of wholeness and peace.
Hmm.
So that's the big picture every day.
Yeah.
That it's our North Star. And we have deliberately worked at keeping that fresh and alive and active, not just as a poster on the wall, but really as a way we try to define our primary motivation. When I first got acquainted with the different buildings and the leaders and the teams, uh, we as part of our visioning, we did some focus groups, and at our oldest building, the families would say, it's hard to describe. We don't really have the words, but there's something different. When I come in the
Hmm.
door, I feel something here.
Hmm.
And when you press them, it would be about love.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
loving place. It's
Caring.
a
Yeah.
compassionate place. It's a caring
Right.
place. And so we seized on that and added that as a tagline. So when we say United Church Homes celebrating the spirit, that's part of what we really mean, is that,
Hmm.
and that sense pervades. I didn't create it. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
responsible for it, but my job is to nurture it
Nurture it.
and
Yeah.
to and
Evoke
to
it.
build
Yeah.
it and to make sure
Propagate it.
that
Yeah.
it's consistent across all of our operations, and especially when we acquire a new property, and we want to teach the staff and embed them within the culture as well, or new buildings that we bring up and have new people coming in to the organization. Um, we adopted core values,
Right.
uh, compassion, hospitality, respect, integrity, stewardship, and transparency. Those are our guardrails. We have little paper cubes on our desks that we created with those core values.
Nice.
Believe it or not, I was remembering my geometry class from high school when we made these different geometric shapes. I said, "Hey, what if we put," because there was exactly the number
Seven
needed
or
for a
yeah.
square.
Right. Right. Square. Right. Right.
Doggone it, if
If you had one more.
it caught on. It caught on. It was
That's
fun.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and the story behind the compassion, we had a committee, and I involved, instead of like pulling everybody from four corners of the org, we decided to use one of our communities, Parkview up in Sandusky, Ohio, because we were having a board meeting there and introducing people to the community. Anyway, we asked a couple of residents, a couple of staff from Parkview to be part of this process. And at that time, 10 years ago, a lot of talk in the industry about, well, we shouldn't use the word caring because people don't want to know
Mm.
about caring. Put the nursing home way in the background and don't talk about caring or
Right.
compassion. That's out of date. So, I'm trying to steer this small group away from the C word And in order to be with it and all Quran, and the residents looked at me and said, "Compassion, that's what we're here for.
That's why we're
We
here. Yeah.
That's
Oh
why we're
God.
here."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, I love it.
duh, hit me on the head.
Yeah.
And so it's, of course, we immediately got it. And of course, as a pastor, I'm looking to heaven saying, yes, I get it. I hear you, God. And really serendipitously, we had looked at, I don't know, a couple dozen values, how that process goes. And we had a bunch on the table, and we finally, we were talking about transparency and compassion. And somebody kind of remarked, if you rearrange these, the letters spell Christ.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's terrific.
It was
Wow.
totally unseen,
He was working
unforeseen.
between the lines.
I
I
know. I
love
mean,
it.
it was. I don't want to sound maudlin about it, but it was
Yeah.
like, well, here it is. If
There
you
you
needed
go. Yeah.
the dove
Yeah.
descending from heaven. I mean, and so it was a beautiful one. A
And
transforming
it all
moment for
starts with compassion, right?
It
It all
does.
starts with the
It
seed.
does.
Yeah.
So,
I love it.
our employees have gotten around this in very practical ways. We have created an employee recognition award
Nice.
that we call the Live It Award, which builds on these values, and we recognize individuals and groups within the company that exemplify a particular value through a
Right.
project or an event that they've worked in. It's become very popular.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Ken, we're just about out of time, but we always ask our guests one last question, and that's what kind of career and life advice would you give someone that maybe is, a decade or two younger than you, but it's got their sights on, public service, but wants to be in that corner office someday?
Well, of course, my experience has been don't don't rest on your credentials.
Hmm.
It's who you are and what you bring. Skills and technology can be taught, can be learned, but in this work, because it's so much about people and
Yeah.
and changing people's lives and supporting people, it's the so-called soft skills that I feel are very important to keep in mind as a leader,
Yeah.
because they're always needed, they're always in demand. And I've seen some of the the more technically adept people in this work, and they don't always succeed because they're going by some in some learned uh, philosophy or technique or
Hmm.
coursework they did. The folks that tend to do well in this work have a great balance of their experience, but also integrating through their personal commitments.
Yeah.
Um, we're not a sectarian organization, but in an era when a lot of the denominational related founded facilities and organizations are going sort of away, pulling away from their founding denominations, we've gone back the other direction. We've gone
Hmm.
stronger into the church. We've gone stronger into our nonprofit roots and faith-based roots in a number of ways that I think is making us distinctive.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Reverend Kenneth Daniel, President and CEO of United Church Homes, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Well, thank you for this opportunity, and let me ask you to pronounce the name of my college one more time. Let me see how your
Kutztown.
Pennsylvania Kutztown.
Kutztown. I did it a little better that time. Thanks so
Yeah,
much again,
the
Ken.
home of Andre Reed from the Buffalo Bills. All right, man.
All
Thank
the
you
best.
for this chance to talk.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.